Okay, thanks, Terry. And thanks to all of you for joining me today. Um, this is one of my favorite trips, so it's also one of my favorite programs to give. Um, I'm thrilled that I'll have an opportunity to show you some of the wonders of Brazil's Pantanal. Brazil is a huge country. It's comparable in size to the United States, although it's conformed differently. The Pantanal is in the southwest part of it. I'll show you a few maps. I just have a few words to say before we get started, and I'll show you plenty of pictures. But up front, this is the world's largest wetland. It's more than 42 million acres of wetland, and it's one of the most pristine ones in the world. It's mostly in Brazil, and I'll show you that in a few maps in a few minutes. But basically, from November until March, it is a gigantic floodplain. This is South America, so of course their winter is what we consider winter. November to March is their summer, and that's when the rains come and the rivers overflow their banks and flood adjacent lowlands, and birders don't go there in November to March because it's the roads are impassable. We went there during the dry season. This trip was in July of 2019, and I was traveling with a bird tour company named Sunrise Birding out of Cause Cobb, Connecticut. There were 10 of us plus three leaders, and get ready for some good fun here, I think, folks. I hope you enjoy it. This is using the colors that I did on the first screen is because this is the Brazilian flag, order in progress. We flew nonstop out of Chicago to Sao Paulo, Brazil, 9 hours. Then we sat on the ground for about, little samba music just to get you feeling about Brazil. That is, samba is the national dance of Brazil. Then after having sat on the ground in Sao Paulo for 6 hours, we took another quick hop up to the town of Cuiabá, which is right up here. And you can see on this map that Cuiabá is up here in the north. And the bright green that I'm circling right now is the Pantanal. So we finally got some sleep, spent the night in Cuiabá. And this is the beginning of the Pantanal right here. And this is the Pantanal Highway, which we will be traveling on. Notice as you look at this map of the Pantanal, there's just river, all the blue lines are rivers. There's a little bit of the Pantanal in Bolivia and a little bit over here in Paraguay. But otherwise, and there are two states in Brazil. This is Mato Grosso, and this is Mato Grosso do Sul, which means in the south. So off we go. Here we have arrived at the beginning of the Pantanal and the Trans-Pantanal Highway. As they say, here begins the Pantanal and you're welcome. This is where indeed the paved road starts and the red dirt road starts. It's only 78 miles long, but there are 122 bridges. This is Edward Patrial, who was our superb Brazilian guide for the majority of the trip. As you can see, he thinks he's pretty cool, and he is, and he's funny and a great birder. And that's what it looks like. It's very flat, and it's dry because, thank God, it's not the rainy season. This is what the Pantanal looks like during the rainy season, and you won't see this. I just picked this photo up off the internet just to give you an idea. This is when we're in a boat, and the only reason for this picture is to show you that when the rainy season comes, this is where the water comes up to, where these lianas look dark is where the water is. So here's the Trans-Pantanal Highway. This is the first bridge right there, and this is the bus that we traveled on. Right up front, we had some beautiful great egrets on a clump of vegetation. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the squawks of a great egret. It's my personal feeling that the prettier the bird is, the worse the sound, but that's not true all the time. Stalking around at our first stop was a jabiru. This is a very common bird. He's about 5 feet tall, if you can imagine. His wingspan is about 8 feet, and that beak is about a foot long. Here's his sound. Oh, come on. Another shot of the jabiru. Oh, I don't want to back up. See over his back, there's another bird in this picture. This is the bird that was there. It's a rufescent tiger heron. Now this bird can stretch its neck out as it has done, or it can hunch down and just look like a little old man. But this is the rufescent tiger heron, and this is what he sounds like. And here's a juvenile rufescent tiger heron. As you can see, the foliage is completely different, but he can still extend that neck and look up where, raise that head up and see where he's going or what he's trying to see. And here we ran across some black-bellied whistling ducks. These are unusual looking ducks. Mostly in the US, you can find them down in southern Florida and in southern Texas. But some of you who follow birds, if you do at all, there were some black-bellied whistling ducks in a park out in Glenview a couple of summers ago. I went out there twice to see them and missed them both times. But I'd rather see birds where they really belong. And those birds, those whistling ducks didn't belong in Glenview. You can hear why they're called whistling ducks. And we also found a little blue heron. And overhead, there were about 30 large-billed terns. Large-billed terns basically make their living eating fish. And of course, the fish get concentrated during the dry season. So they come to the pools, and that's why these guys were hanging out, and one of them gave me a good shot. Sounds a little like a gull. And over there across the way, first of many striated herons climbing around in the foliage. And here we go. There were literally hundreds of Yakari caiman grinning at us. These are obviously in the gator family. They are about the same size, tend to have a flatter head and a flatter nose than alligators. And there are thought to be about 10 million caiman in the Pantanal. I don't have anything to give you what they sound like. Mostly they don't make much noise except if they're flirting with each other. Here they do tend to have their mouths open. I think that's the way they keep cool. Anyway, also in the foliage around our first stop was a black-capped Danacobius. There were 2 of them, but I only got one in this shot. And we found a scarlet-headed blackbird. Those of us in the Chicago area are much more familiar with red-winged blackbirds, which are our first birds that return in the spring. But we don't have anything as stunning as this scarlet-headed blackbird. Very attractive. Here's his sound. We also had a saffron finch. This is the female over here that is the only one we saw. I did pick up a photo of the male saffron finch. I do have to tell you that in the bird world, as opposed to in the human world, the male birds tend to be a little bit fancier than the females. Of course, we all know that's not true in the human world. So I think the main reason is that the females are the ones that tend to sit on the eggs on the nest, but some males also help with incubating the eggs. So who knows why Mother Nature figured it out that way. Here's what a saffron finch sounds like. We also found a barred antshrike. This is the male. The female, they both have shaggy crests, but the female he's mostly black and white, and the female is mostly brown. Here was his call. And we also found a masked gnatcatcher. This would be the comparable bird around here is a blue-gray gnatcatcher. Looks somewhat like this bird, but this one definitely has a Brazilian ring to it. Here's his sound. Oops. Come on, talk for us. And then we found a black-backed water tyrant. Made a lovely picture for me. The birds are not usually that cooperative. Lots of nice variety in this one stop. And we also got some mammals. This is a capybara. This is the largest rodent in the world. I read that they can get as large as 175 pounds. I can't imagine one. I've never seen one that large, but they are quite prevalent, and they are usually in family groups, as this one is. And then here's a nice little family group with nursing babies. And then we had a rusty-backed ant wren. This is the male. That's his nice song. And this is the female. Typically, it's the males that do the calling. But you can see that they look somewhat alike, but not too much. And I just want to say that here in the Pantanal, this part of the Pantanal, there were termite mounds everywhere, but they disappeared as we went further south. We stopped at our first lodge, and we had some lunch, did a little birding around the lodge, and then after lunch, we went out in skiffs on the Pixim River. There's something flying over here, but darned if I can remember what that was. Anyway, he was too far away for a photo. So here we are heading down the river. We spotted an anhinga and a yellow rump cacique. Come on. And then we spotted the stunning snail kite. This bird, obviously from its name, lives to eat snails, and his beak is offset so that he can get into the snail shell and get the yum stuff out. Here's his call. And overhead, a black-colored hawk flew by. A lot of hawks have that sort of typical whistle call. He came in and stopped and gave us a much better look. You can see his black collar right there. And going down the river, we ran into a ringed kingfisher. There's a bunch of different kingfishers, I think 5 in Brazil. We did see all of them. I'm not sure if I got photos of all of them. It's a rattle call of a kingfisher. Our kingfishers will sound something like that too. In the States, our kingfisher is the belted. Here's a green kingfisher. This is the male. And there's the female. She doesn't have the, see the orange breast? He's a little fancier than she is. But she's still pretty. And we're heading down the river as it gets dark. And night was falling as we headed back. This is one of the herons all hunched over like herons tend to do as night comes. And this is the nest of a thorn bird at twilight. Kind of wound up our first day in the Pantanal. The next morning, we were out bright and early and found a couple of blue-crowned parakeets. There's a better look at the blue crown. And right near the boat ramp was a great-necked wood rail just stalking around like he owned the place. And also near the boat ramp was a guira cuckoo. Now we have cuckoos in North America, but we don't have a guira cuckoo. And ours are usually very hard to find. This guy was just out boldly. And we found a great kiskadee. This is a pretty common bird in South America. And the name is said to sound like its call. So see if you can hear kiskadee in his voice. Kiskadee, I hear it. And right then and there, we had a Hyacinth Macaw fly by. This is the largest parrot in the world. And it is an absolutely stunning bird. And I'm in love with them. But we have lots more Hyacinth Macaws to come later. So I'm going to just move along. However, if there are parrots around, you can usually hear them. And then nearby, we found a great putu. Can you see this bird? Here's his tail. And here's his upper body. And he's looking to the right. There's the tip of his beak. And there's his eye. These are nocturnal birds, and so they sleep during the day, and they're very cryptic, as you can see. He blends in very well. Kind of a mysterious sounding call. Now, I managed to get lucky, and he opened his eyes. You see, here's one eye, and here's the other eye in his beak. We must have alarmed him a little bit for him to wake up. And then he turned away again, and there you can see how big his beak is, and it's because he's a member of the frogmouth family, and they have a huge mouth because they are insectivores, and when they go out flying at night, they use this huge mouth to catch the insects and eat them without even chewing on them at all. Also, we spotted a pale-crested woodpecker. This is an absolutely gorgeous bird that we have nothing similar to in North America. That gold crest is just a knockout. Here's his call. And the closest we have to this is a pileated, but that it looks like he's gone to the hairdresser and gotten blue highlights, yellow highlights. Anyway, we also encountered a southern screamer. This is a large bird, as you can tell. He's standing on a tussock, and you will hear why they call him a screamer. So now we're at the southernmost point of our trip on the Pantanera Highway at the Hotel Pantanal Norte. As you can see, this is a bunch of fishermen, and there's got the fish up here. But we were there for jaguars, and we were not too interested, but then they weren't too interested in jaguars either. Next morning, we sat out in open skiffs on the Cuiabá River to look for the stunning jaguar. We had 2 skiffs, And I've got to be honest with you, I'm cynical. And I thought if we were lucky, we might get a jaguar sleeping under a heavy tree or something. I'm not so sure. Anyway, I just would like to point out to you that this is Steve Bird. He's one of the co-leaders of the trip. And we were hoping we would get lucky and catch jaguars, but who knew? And this is the sort of habitat. I mean, this is beach and this is low scrub. I don't know where jaguars hang out, but I just didn't know what to think. And I wasn't too certain that things were looking good either. And then guess what? Ta-da! There he was, right there, our first jaguar. It was early in the day and he was just out for a stroll. And for a short while, he walked toward us in the skiff. Now we're in open boats, but the take on it is that as long as you're in a boat, you're not part of the food chain. You just don't make the mistake of getting out of the boat. Somehow the boat seems off limits to the jaguars. Anyway, what a gorgeous beast he was. Look at that coat. And you can tell there isn't anything that this guy fears. He is indeed the king of the Pantanal. So he decided to go have a little drink. And now, mind you, these are cats. These are big cats, but these are cats. And I thought, holy cow, he's going in for a swim. Now that I think about it, living where he lives, he'd better know how to swim, because during the rainy season, that's all there is water. Anyway, off he went into the water, and he clearly loved it. And he wasn't afraid. He wasn't just going to the next quick place. He was just out for a good long swim. And he knew what he was heading for. And he came ashore. And this is just light scrub. He had something hidden, possibly an unfinished capybara, and he blended in so well. He's in just very light shrub, and he practically blends in and became invisible. That just amazed me. So we did have jaguars. Oh my, we had jaguars. There were 7 individual different animals that we found. It was better than my wildest expectations. So to go from the largest to one of the teensiest, not far away from the jaguar, we found this teensy little pied plover. And the pied plover was doing his morning ablutions. First, he was flickering his feathers to settle them down. Then he put his head back over his shoulder. And then he decided, I think he was ready to go on with his day. Oops, I want to give you a sound. A little sound for a little bird. And then I love the juxtaposition of the jabiru, enormous jabiru, 5 feet tall, and a teensy egret. And now we are on the grounds of the Jaguar Lodge. And there were 2 Hyacinth Macaws playing in the water that the sprinklers had put out. They were just having a ball. And this is a little cattle tyrant watching the parrots play together. It was a wonderful experience. Here's a close-up of one of them. The color of these birds these are not photo enhanced, folks. I don't do that. This is what they look like. They are breathtaking. And of course, and as I said, if parrots are around, you usually hear them. But they were just having such a good time. Who wouldn't love these birds? They are playful, they're gorgeous, and they always look like they're smiling. Here's one sitting on a lamppost eating a nut. The grounds of this lodge were just amazing. There were buff-necked ibis, all over the grass. I had trouble. I was shooting with a 400mm lens, which is like this. I could hardly get far enough away from this bird to take this picture. But they have the typical ibis decurved beak and a red eye, and of course the red legs. Here's his sound. And also stalking around the grounds were a southern crested caracara. As dramatic as this bird looks, it's very common. In fact, they call it the chicken of the Pantanal. Here's what he sounds like. And now we found a lineated woodpecker. This is also on the grounds of the Pantanal Norte, Hotel Norte. This is a lineated woodpecker, which is the closest I've come in South America to something that looks like our pileated. A big bird, probably bigger than our pileated from my recollection. If they're around, you know they're here too, because they are very noisy. And we found a bare-faced curassow. This is the male, and he's got, this is not a bad hair day. He always has this curly coif. And here's his sound. I love that. And here's his lady friend. She hasn't quite got as curly a coif as he does. And here we go again. Here's another cattle tyrant. This one was hanging out with a horse. He didn't know that he was supposed to be with a cow. Probably there weren't any cows around. And there is another same cattle tyrant on the horse. And then we ran across the stunning crested oropendulas. The oro part of oropendula refers to the gold feathers in the tail. They have a wonderful burbling call. And also a Chaco chachalaca. You see if you think that the name sounds like Chaco is an area, but chachalaca is what the bird is called. And I think that it's probably because of its call. Chachalaca, yeah, sounds like it to me. And then we found a southern lapwing. This is a male in breeding plumage. And here's, I love this, another southern screamer with a little teensy chicana following around behind him. Also, there were toko toucans on the grounds of the lodge, and the manager of the hotel put fruit out. And late in the day, these pictures are a little soft because it was getting to the end of the day and the light was not great, but it's just so fun. And they can very delicately pick up these little pieces of fruit in that long beak and then toss it in the air and throw it down their gullet. Now, don't you agree that that's one of the prettiest birds and it is one of the ugliest sounds? Anyway, there were two of them. They loved their afternoon fruit snacks, that's for sure. And also just around the corner from the toucans were some white woodpeckers on a palm frond. There's nothing in this country that looks like this bird. Here there were two of them, probably a male and a female, but most cooperative. And then we ran across a purplish jay. Now, we're all familiar with our blue and white jays there in the States. This guy was a stunner, and he sounded like this. Then we ran across a Nande parakeet, which is also known as a black-hooded parakeet. Now you can tell that they're meant to be in these trees because they blend in so well. That's the sound of them. There's two of them in this picture. And then we found a whole flock of them. So we didn't have a perfectly beautiful sky, but you don't often get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parakeets in one picture. Always noisy. And this is a campo flicker. We have flickers in this country, but they're nowhere near what that one looks like. We had a flyby. I have a pair of yellow-collared macaws. Here you can see just a little bit of the yellow collar on their on the back of their neck. And then we found a nice little woods where we found a rufous wood creeper, which is many creepers, and we have brown creepers in the States that are about this big. This guy, it was huge, as you can see by the size of his feet and the size of his beak, the giant of the wood creepers. Here's another. There were actually two of them there. And so we're off for a boat ride in the afternoon. And we've found a couple of tocotoucans. These are not the ones that get fed by the manager fruit. They have to go find their own fruit, watching us go by. And we found, this was a prize bird, endemic chestnut-bellied guan. Now, endemic means this bird is only found in this one place in the world. So if you're a lister, which means you're a birder who keeps track of every bird you see, you need to get this bird if you come to Brazil, to this part of Brazil, because this is the only place you're ever going to see it. Here's what he sounds like. And along the riverbank was a cocoy heron, and he would be our equivalent of a great blue heron, which I have one over my shoulder here, a small sculpture. This is obviously a fish eater along the river, banks of the river, and he will sound like this. And then he decided to take off just as we were flying by. That was a nice bit of timing on my part, or a lot of luck in my part. So moving on down the river, we did run across a green and rufous kingfisher. This is the hardest of all the kingfishers to see. He's not very big, and he is definitely back in the foliage, but we got a pretty good look at him. Not a typical kingfisher call at all. And then we ran across a plumbeous ibis. This is what I meant by the ibis's decurved beak. And then we were scrounging around in the woods trying to find this guy, and lo and behold, he showed up. What a knockout. This is not a mistake. This is his beak. And obviously he uses it for getting insects out from under the bark and stuff like that. Anyway, it was a red-billed scythebill, well named. And a southern scrub flycatcher. And then we found a golden green woodpecker. And he does have, the light's poor, so forgive me for this not being a great shot. But the thing that's funny about this picture is that there's a gecko up here above the golden green woodpecker. And I'm not so sure whether he's trying to compete with the woodpecker for the insects, or if he's saying this is my tree, or if I were him, I'd be getting out of there. But anyway, here's what the golden green woodpecker sounds like. Another shot of him kind of hiding in the foliage. Here's here's a stunning bird. It's, as you can see, it's just looks like a normal bird walking along the bank, and he has a wonderful call. Listen to this call. Now I have to tell you up front, the next picture isn't my photograph. I'd kill to have taken it. It was taken by our co-leader, Steve Bird. That is this bird in flight. Isn't that unbelievable? Look at that. Look at how does Mother Nature create these things? It is an absolutely knockout photo, and I'm just thrilled to be able to share it with you. So now here we are moving along. Once again, hundreds of caiman everywhere, egrets in the background, and a large-billed gull up there. And we found, of all things, a great horned owl. Obviously, we're in a little forest here, and this is the very same great horned owl that we have in the Chicago area. They're quite plentiful around here. You might hear them at night, particularly this time of year, because they will be duetting back and forth, and males and females, they get together and start to nest in about January. If you hear them duetting, one will make that hoo 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 hoo, and the other go hoo 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 hoo. They'll do that back and forth till they decide to get together. So then we found the very lovely capped heron with this long plume and this blue face. Makes me believe he's in breeding plumage, and the water hyacinth. And this is just to show you that jabiroos really can fly. They are enormous. I think they're probably the largest bird that can fly. Anyway, they fly well and are stunning. Remember that beak is a foot long. So we found a jabiru stork nest on the side of the road. So we walked down to take a peer at that. And then we found above him was the Plumbeus ibis. It's somewhere up in here. There was a Plumbeus ibis nesting. So that was a nice coincidence. And we found a kind of a scrubby little forest. And lo and behold, found a black-tailed marmoset. He's got a funny face. And he had an enormously long tail. I mean, oops, sorry. The tail goes all the way down and out of the picture. And then the next morning on the ground, a crane hawk. He was obviously, this was breakfast down here that we weren't seeing because of the mud. But this is what he would sound like if he called. And then a pair of red-legged seriemas with their wonderful bristles on the between their above their beak and before their eyes. Not quite sure what that's all about. But that's their call. And you couldn't tell it because of the tall grass there. They're very long-legged birds as he went striding across the road, and there was his female. And after we saw the seriemas, we moved on to a totally different habitat and a large, lovely lodge in the national park called Chapada dos Guimares. It was a charming small lodge that was just big enough for our group. And we actually did occasionally have a time to have a little siesta. Not often and not for long, because we were out birding around most of the time. This was an ipe tree, a Brazilian walnut in stunning flower. And boy, that morning, did we get the macaws. Oops, sorry. So this was a blue-winged macaw. There's a little blue on that wing. Well, birds don't usually sit for you like that. This is the sort of habitat that we were in, where we found the macaws.
Hi, I'm Bixby. You can talk to me anytime, just by using your...
And there were a pair of blue-winged macaws who were clearly in love. They couldn't have been cuter if they were something else. Anyway, there you got to see the blue and the blue-winged macaw's wings. And a pair of lettered aracari showed up. Now the letters refer to, sorry, the pictures aren't better, but they were a little distance. The letters refer to the marks on the beak, and they have kind of a light blue eyebrow, which is unusual. You don't usually see that. Here's what they sound like. There's the light blue a little bit better. And then 5 chestnut-eared aracari showed up. Now, look at the bright red yellow belly band, and then the yellow breast, and then these incredible marked beaks. And here's what they sounded like. At one point, they all looked the same way. It doesn't happen. And then this little red-shouldered, I'm not sure if there's some sound on this. I guess not. Sorry, I thought I had sound for the aracaris. Okay, and the red-shouldered macaws are the smallest macaw. And we found a common iguana. These guys are mostly all over the place, but this is the one I've got a chance to photograph. And then we had a greater rhea. Now these are flightless birds. These are big birds. There's a male showing off for the female. And she's fluttering her wings at them, so it looks to me like they've found each other. And as I said, these are flightless. Those are not the kind of wings that are going to get them up in the air, but they can run as fast as 40 miles an hour. So that's how they take care of getting away from things they don't like. And then here we are once again in this Cerrado habitat where we found the curl-crested jay. There's a little bit of a curl crest. It has a definite jay sound to him. Here's a better shot of him in better light. The jays of the world are spectacular. Unbelievable, all over the world, just remarkable. This guy's one of the prettiest. And then we found this little teensy white-eared puffbird. He didn't move at all. You know, if birds don't move, sometimes it's hard to see them. But I did manage to get a little shot. Here's his call. And then the main reason we went to the Chapada was to get these yellow-faced parrots. They're very rare. And we found a nice flock of 7. A little bit closer up. They had interesting coloration. Pretty underwing. They gave us a show for our driving. And then unfortunately, a cold front came in the next day, and it was cold and misty, and it was hard to find any birds. This was a black-faced tanager, and the tanager family is one of my favorites, but these are not the colorful ones. Here's a couple of black-faced tanagers. And then we found a pair of Suriri flycatchers. They were just frenetic. They would never, I got one shot where they sat still. There, one shot where they sat still. And then we found a shrike-like tanager, a white-banded tanager. Just sounds like a chip note. Better shot. Here's an Amazonian motmot. This is a tail, and they call this a racket. They think the bird stripped some of the feathers off to make the tail more dramatic looking. But this is what happened to our weather. Fortunately, we just finished up in the Pantanal, and we're heading to the Amazon. So we did get up to the Amazon, and approaching our new lodge, we found a lagoon with blue and yellow macaws. Like all parrots, they sound like all parrots. This was a bunch of palm trees that had been drowned, so they all died. But oh my, the macaws just loved them. And there were about 50 of these macaws around this lagoon. Unfortunately, they were really far away for great pictures, but I think I pulled this shot off the internet, to be honest with you. So this was our new lodge called Posada Jardim de Amazonia. They had these fish pools, they raised fish, and they raised something called, oh, I've forgotten the name of it, enormous fish. But you know, we were there for birds. We did see some Julia heliconian butterflies, beautiful. And on the trail, we found a bare-necked fruit crow. This guy was right over my head. And so I did find, there's his sound. Not a great call, but this is a close-up of his head that I took off the internet. You can't see that from my shot, but oh well, that's what it really is. And then the teensy brown jacamar was on this liana, and it had a great big bug. He sat and thought about it for a while. And if he hadn't had a bug in his beak, that's what he would have sounded like. Yum, it didn't take him long. It was gone in a second. So when we went out late afternoon in the Amazon to find what was the rarest bird we were to see on this trip. And fortunately, our boatman knew how to get to it. We had to go through the mangroves. One would never get there if you didn't have somebody that knew what they were doing. And this bird has been thought to be extinct. We did see a couple of them in this oxbow lake. This is the bird. It's called a cone-billed tanager. And my shots were very distant, so I did take this picture off the internet. It is really, truly, we were privileged to see this bird, and we did hear it sing. So pretty call, pretty sound. Wonderful that they rediscovered these birds not that long ago. In the same oxbow lake, I found this darling blue-headed parrot. Look at the colors of this bird. Just amazing. He was a bit of a show-off. He knew I was taking pictures of him. And I just couldn't stop. He was too cute for words. So as we're turning back to the lodge in the near dark, we were spotlighting with a big, strong light on the banks. And by gum, Steve, I think, found this Brazilian tapir swinging. Look at this creature with his elephant-like nose. He didn't like us. He didn't like being discovered by us. So, and of course it was too dark for photos. So I did take this photograph off the internet, but this is what we saw. And he skedaddled out of the water and disappeared very fast. The next day we've had a lesser kiskadee. See if this sounds like the kiskadee you heard before. Nope, doesn't say kiskadee to me at all. We had a beautiful short-tailed hawk overhead. giving us a nice show. And then we'd had a southern lapwing earlier, but I got a pair this time. And I particularly like this shot because you can see, first of all, he's got this lovely little upswept plume, and then the bronzy shoulder. That's fancy breeding plumage for a bird. Here's his sound. And late on the last afternoon, a brown capuchin monkey was watching us and chewing on his nuts. There's a nut. He's a bit of a clown and obviously getting a kick out of giving us a show. There were clouds of butterflies puddling on the lodge's grounds. And one of the guides found a Goliath beetle. Look at this thing. Holy cow. Man, I wouldn't want him on my shoulder. Anyway, this last lodge had a pristine river that ran right through it. It was, look at the color of that water. This is nature. There's nobody putting any chemicals in this. And this was a spring-fed natural pool where I did manage to finally get a swim the last day. And what a great way it was to end a fabulous trip to Brazil's Pantanal and the Amazon. So thank you so much for watching. The star of the show says farewell. And this is Brazil. I had to put it in. So we tallied 319 species of birds on this trip and 26 sightings of other tropical critters such as bats, monkeys, coati, tapir, deer, cavi, iguana, caiman, anaconda, tortoise, toad, and leafcutter and army ants. It was a spectacular trip, and I want to give a shout out to the owner of Sunrise Birding. This is Gina Nickel. She is the instigator of all these tours. Sunrise is my favorite bird tour company, and Gina is also a brilliant birder and an outstanding photographer. And there's an outside chance she'll be doing a show for Prospect Heights Library sometime in the future. So thanks for coming, folks. I hope I got your mind off the snowstorm coming for at least an hour. And I've had fun talking with you. That's it, Terry.
Thanks, Mary Lou. That was fascinating. Wow, what a trip. I'm going to pull up the chat and see what questions. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, or if you prefer, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Let me see here. Let me get the questions up. A lot of compliments, Mary Lou, saying awesome. Thank you very much. Amazing. Fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you all. I love sharing.
So, question here is, any hummingbirds?
Not on this trip. Not on this trip. There are over 300 species of hummingbirds in the world. And I could be wrong. There might have been a hummingbird or two, but not. And I do want to tell you all that hummingbirds are only in North and South America. And obviously the majority of them are in South America, but I don't recall any hummingbirds on this trip.
All right. Someone is asking, well, someone commented, makes me want to travel there. And another question is, what is the name of the elephant-looking animal?
Oh, a Brazilian tapir, T-A-P-I-R.
All right. Dana from the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission wants me to remind everybody to come back Thursday night. The speaker for Nature Speaks is Chris Helzer, and it's all the little things, and there's still lots of good seats available, so join us for that. Also, tomorrow night, if you're looking for a refuge from the snow, we're going to be going to the beach with the Beach Boys and Gary Weinstrup tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. So another good.
So I want to correct myself, Terry, on one thing.
Yes.
We did have hummingbirds, not tons of them, but we had a buff-bellied hermit, a white-vented violet ear, a black-throated mango, white-tailed golden throat, long-billed starthroat, blue-tufted starthroat, glittering-bellied emerald, swallow-tailed hummingbird, fork-tailed wood nymph, and glittering-throated emerald. So obviously your favorite photographer, namely me, got no photos of those, but we did see them. And this is the checklist that you get at the end of a trip that tells you what you have. And this trip was in 2019, and obviously my brain doesn't remember the hummingbirds very well. So
Another patron wants to know, and I'm interested too, did you see any anacondas?
yes, the trip did. The trip did. I was taking an afternoon off. They had a humongous anaconda. I think it was 10 foot long. I think that might be the largest snake in the world. I wasn't out that afternoon, and I missed it. And one thing I did forget to say too is that you might wonder what jaguars eat. Jaguars eat caiman. So it's a good thing there's 10 million caiman around there. So the jaguars have plenty to eat.
Someone wants to know, how hot was it?
You know, it was not impossible. It was hot enough that the afternoon that they got the anaconda, it was too hot for me to go back out. You know, those boats have no shade. But it was never unbearable. Now, I think we were there in July. I think you get there in September, it gets hotter. If I were planning that trip, I would check into what the temperatures are. It was hot, and one afternoon it was too hot for me to go out a second time. But other than that, I was reasonably comfortable. Always glad to get in the shower at the end of the day, but reasonably comfortable.
And what about bugs? Were there mosquitoes? Someone wants to know.
Yeah, no. Other than that thing you saw on what's his name's shoulder, I don't recall. And the butterflies, I don't recall any insects. Oh, a lot of the birds that you see are eating the insects, so there's obviously insects to be had, but they were certainly not a problem.
All right, another comment. Thanks so much. Stay warm. Enjoyed your colorful bird sounds and a chance to see your photos.
Wonderful. What a nice compliment. Thank you. Thank you all for joining me. And
we also want to let them know you're coming back, Mary Lou.
Oh, yes.
You're coming back February 22nd, which is a Monday at 1 o'clock. And you're going to take us on a cruise to the Seychelles Islands.
Yes, this is a really remarkable experience. The Seychelles Islands are kind of in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Not very many people go there. And I had a marvelous 2 weeks in the Seychelles on a 220-foot yacht on a birding trip, going from island to island to island. It's water that you've never seen the color like, and all kinds of interesting stuff. So I hope many of you will be able to join me for that one. I enjoy giving the trips because I get to relive the experience when I'm showing the shows. So the Seychelles is one of my favorites. And I think, some celebrities got married in the Seychelles. It's in my presentation. Come back and see us next month, and you'll find out who it is.